The last day of peace. Nova Haven gleamed like a pearl against the emerald atmosphere of Kepler 186f, its geodesic domes catching the light of the red dwarf star that had nurtured humanity's most distant colony for the past 15 years. Governor Elena Rodriguez stood at her office window, watching transport ships gracefully descend through the morning sky. The colony's population had just surpassed 1 million, each citizen drawn by the promise of building something new on this pristine world. She couldn't have known it was the last peaceful sunrise she would ever see. The first sign came from the Quantum Communications Array. Dr. Marcus Way, Nova Haven's chief astronomer, noticed the anomalies during his morning review. Ripples in space-time, subtle distortions that suggested something massive was approaching. Protocol dictated he alert both the governor and Earth's deep space monitoring network, but before his fingers could reach the console, the sky turned purple. The Zarkali warfleet dropped out of hyperspace like a swarm of metallic locusts, their biomechanical ships writhing as they adjusted to normal space. 300 vessels, each one larger than the colony's central dome, arranged themselves in an attack formation that had conquered 1,000 worlds. Inside the lead vessel, Fleet Commander Vexthor studied the human settlement with 6 pairs of compound eyes. Such primitive construction, he chittered to his executive officer. They still use physical barriers against the elements. No energy fields, no gravitational manipulation. This will be even easier than intelligence suggested. On his command bridge's display, targeting computers analyzed Nova Haven's defenses, or rather, the lack of them. No orbital platforms, no defense grid, not even basic shield generators, just a collection of elegant but fragile domes housing 1 million beings who had never known war. The Zarkali Empire had spent centuries expanding through the galaxy, absorbing or eliminating any civilization they encountered. Their philosophy was simple: strength through conquest, unity through dominance. They had expected more from the humans, whose radio transmissions suggested at least a basic understanding of physics and spaceflight. But this was disappointing. Governor Rodriguez was in the middle of her morning briefing when the alert came. The colony's modest traffic control radar had finally registered the massive fleet above them. Her military advisor, Captain Sarah Chen, formerly of Earth's Space Force, went pale. "Ma'am," Chen's voice was steady despite her complexion. "Initiate Protocol Omega. Now." Rodriguez hesitated for just a moment. Protocol Omega was supposed to be a theoretical exercise, a contingency plan they had practiced but never expected to use. It would send an emergency quantum transmission to Earth, burn their most sensitive data, and begin civilian evacuation procedures. It seemed extreme, almost paranoid. The first plasma bolt that pierced the upper atmosphere decided for her. "Execute Omega," she ordered, and klaxons began to wail throughout the colony. The Zarkali attack was precise and methodical. Their initial barrage targeted communications arrays and spaceports, standard procedure for minimizing resistance and preventing escape. They expected panic, chaos, the usual response of unprepared populations facing superior forces. Instead, they witnessed something unprecedented. As their ships began their descent, the ground beneath Nova Haven split open. Massive hangar doors, camouflaged to match the surrounding terrain, swung wide. From their depths rose sleek vessels that bore no resemblance to the primitive shuttles the Zarkali had observed. These ships were black as space itself, their hulls seeming to drink in light rather than reflect it. "Impossible," Vexthor whispered as his sensors struggled to lock onto the human vessels. "Their technology level." Before he could complete the thought, the first of Nova Haven's defense ships opened fire. Beams of coherent darkness, weaponized gravitational distortions, lanced through his fleet's formation, shearing 3 capital ships in half. Captain Chen's fingers flew across her command console aboard the NHD Vigilant, one of 20 hidden Guardian vessels that had laid dormant beneath the colony since its founding. "All ships, execute Pattern Delta. Priority targets are their command vessels." Buy time for the civilian evacuation. The battle that erupted in the skies above Nova Haven would be studied in war colleges for centuries to come. 20 ships against 300 should have been a slaughter. And it was, just not in the way the Zarkali expected. The human vessels moved like ghosts through their formation, their advanced ECM systems making targeting nearly impossible. Each shot they fired found its mark with devastating precision. But they were still hopelessly outnumbered. One by one, the Guardian ships fell, taking dozens of Zarkali vessels with them. They accomplished their primary mission. The civilian evacuation ships, hidden in even deeper bunkers, managed to launch under the cover of battle. Hundreds of thousands of colonists escaped into emergency FTL trajectories, scattering in all directions according to pre-planned protocols. Governor Rodriguez refused to leave her post, coordinating the evacuation until the last possible moment. As the final civilian ship cleared the atmosphere, she turned to Captain Chen on her view screen. "It's been an honor, Sarah. Make sure Earth knows what happened here." Chen's response was cut off as a plasma bolt finally penetrated the central dome's defenses. Rodriguez closed her eyes as her office disintegrated around her, knowing that her death would not go unanswered. The quantum transmission had already reached Earth, carrying with it everything humanity needed to know about their new enemy. And with it, a simple message that would change the course of human history. First contact protocol breached. Nova Haven under attack. The Lazarus contingency is now in effect. In high orbit, Commander Vexthor surveyed the ruins of what had been Nova Haven with a mixture of satisfaction and unease. Yes, they had achieved their objective. The colony was destroyed, its infrastructure reduced to molten slag. But the cost had been far too high. 87 ships lost to just 20 defenders, and somehow most of the population had escaped. "Send word to High Command," he ordered. "The humans are not what they appear to be. Recommend immediate deployment of." The quantum communicator exploded in a shower of sparks. Across his bridge, systems began failing in cascade. The last thing Vexthor saw before his ship's power core detonated was a message scrolling across his main display in perfect Zarkali script. "You should have left us alone." The quantum transmission from Nova Haven reached Earth in less than a second, carrying with it the death knell of humanity's most distant colony. In the depths of the Cheyenne Mountain complex, newly upgraded with quantum computing centers and holographic command interfaces, Fleet Admiral David Jung watched the tactical replay for the third time. The images were crystal clear. The Zarkali fleet, the destruction, the valiant last stand of Nova Haven's hidden defenders. But most importantly, the comprehensive scan data of enemy ship capabilities, weapons systems, and vulnerabilities that the Guardian vessels had transmitted before their destruction. "They gave us everything we needed," John murmured, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic display. "Now we make it count." He turned to face the gathered Joint Chiefs and civilian leadership. Operation Sleeping Giant is now in effect. Authorization code: Thermopylae. Throughout the solar system, dormant systems began to wake. Beneath the surface of Mars, massive doors ground open in the floor of seemingly abandoned mining complexes, revealing shipyards that stretched for kilometers. On Venus, clouds of microscopic machines that had posed as part of the planet's atmospheric research stations coalesced into swarms of autonomous strike craft. In the asteroid belt, what appeared to be ordinary mining operations transformed as entire asteroids split open to reveal fully equipped fleet bases. But the greatest surprise lay in the most obvious place: Earth's moon. For centuries, humanity had maintained the fiction that lunar development was limited to a few scientific outposts and mining operations. The truth was far more impressive. Nearly 40% of the moon's volume had been hollowed out and repurposed, creating the largest military manufacturing complex in known space. Dr. Arya Patel stood in the central control room of Lunar Manufacturing Complex Alpha, watching as production lines that had been running at minimal capacity for decades spooled up to full power. "Status report," she commanded. All systems responding, Director, her AI assistant replied. Current production capacity at 100%. Estimated time to full fleet deployment, 72 hours. On screens around her, similar reports flooded in from facilities across the solar system. Humanity had spent the last 100 years preparing for this moment, building and hiding their true military capability behind a facade of peaceful scientific development. In high orbit above Earth, the civilian space traffic control satellites revealed their true nature. What had appeared to be simple communication relays transformed into the backbone of Earth's defense grid, their metamaterial shells reconfiguring to expose weapon ports and shield generators. At the L4 and L5 Lagrange points, seemingly ordinary space stations began to move. These were the command and control centers for humanity's real fleet, not the modest patrol ships that other species had observed, but the true force that had been hidden in plain sight. Admiral Zhang's voice echoed through every military facility in the solar system. All units, this is not a drill. Operation Sleeping Giant is now active. I say again, Sleeping Giant is active. In the Kuiper Belt, where humanity had maintained small research outposts studying the outer solar system, massive structures began to power up. These were the long-range sensors and FTL communication arrays that would coordinate humanity's response across interstellar distances. The Tsar Kelly had made a fundamental mistake in their assessment of human civilization. They had seen humanity's restraint in showing military force as weakness, their focus on scientific advancement as naive pacifism. They hadn't understood that humans had learned the lessons of their own violent history all too well. In orbit around Jupiter, Commander Yuki Tanaka watched as her research vessel shed its civilian disguise, revealing the advanced warship beneath. The Hyperion-class battlecruiser's quantum engines hummed to life as weapon systems came online. Battle Group Thunderbolt, form up, she ordered. Similar transformations were happening across the Jovian system as dozens of ships revealed their true nature. We are go for Operation Righteous Response. Back in Cheyenne Mountain, Admiral Zhang studied the deployment grid. 700,000 warships were preparing to launch, divided into battle groups that would strike simultaneously across multiple vectors. The Zarkali wouldn't face a disorganized response from a peaceful species. They would confront humanity's full military might, carefully prepared and deployed over generations. Send the message to all commands, Zhang ordered. Rules of engagement are as follows. The Zarkali attacked without provocation or warning. They targeted civilian populations. They have demonstrated their intentions clearly. We will respond in kind. In lunar orbit, the first wave of ships began to move. These weren't hastily armed civilian vessels or converted cargo ships. They were purpose-built warships that had been waiting for this moment. Their hulls incorporated technologies that humanity had developed but kept hidden. Quantum-locked armor that could absorb and redirect energy weapons, dark matter drives that left no signature in normal space, weapons that could tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. Dr. Patel watched from her lunar command center as the ships emerged from their hidden docks. Beginning mass production of Series VII autonomous combat drones, she reported. Projected output, 1 million units per day. The Tsar Kelly had expected to find a vulnerable civilization ripe for conquest. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant, one that had spent centuries preparing for this exact scenario. As humanity's true military might emerge from hiding, the galaxy was about to learn why Earth's history was filled with warnings about underestimating your opponent. In the debris field that had once been Nova Haven, automated beacons activated, broadcasting the simple message in all known frequencies. To all non-hostile species, stand clear. Humanity is going to war. The Zarkeli High Command received the report of Nova Haven's destruction with their customary arrogance. The loss of 87 ships was concerning, but acceptable for subjugating a new species. Supreme Commander Kazthar hadn't achieved dominion over 30 star systems by being cautious. That arrogance evaporated precisely 6 hours later. The first sign that something was wrong came from their forward bases. Quantum communication links went dark one by one, faster than any fleet could move between systems. In the command center of the Zarkala capital world, Casthar watched with mounting concern as sectors of their empire went silent. Impossible, he chittered, his ceremonial armor clicking as he moved. No species has ever penetrated our quantum defense networks. Display the last known positions of all fleet elements. The holographic display showed their forces spread across their territory, a standard defensive posture that had served them well for centuries. But as they watched, signatures began disappearing. In the Proxima Centauri system, Rear Admiral Sarah Chen, one of the few survivors of Nova Haven, led the first wave of humanity's counterattack. Her flagship, the HSS Retribution, emerged from quantum space alongside 5,000 other warships. They appeared simultaneously at every major Zarkali military installation in the system. All ships, execute Operation Thunderstrike, Chen commanded. No mercy. The battle that followed demonstrated just how thoroughly humanity had prepared for interstellar warfare. While the Zarkali ships were formidable, human vessels seemed to operate on entirely different principles. Their quantum-locked armor absorbed energy weapons like they were nothing. Their dark matter drives allowed them to maneuver in ways that seemed to defy physics. But it was the autonomous combat drones that truly broke the Zarkali defensive doctrine. Swarms of intelligent machines, each smaller than a fighter, but carrying weaponry that could cripple capital ships, overwhelmed their targets' defenses through sheer numbers and unprecedented coordination. In the Arcturus sector, Commander Victor Santos led another prong of the human offensive. His battle group targeted the Zarkali's supposedly impregnable production facilities. "Deploy the von Neumann swarms," he ordered. Clouds of microscopic machines were released, targeting the biomechanical components that the Zarkali relied upon for their technology. Within hours, entire shipyards began to break down at the molecular level. The Zarkali had never encountered an enemy that could match their technological sophistication, let alone exceed it. They had grown complacent, relying on the same strategies and technologies that had served them for generations. Humanity, in contrast, had spent centuries innovating in secret, developing weapons and defenses specifically designed to counter any possible threat. Admiral Zhang coordinated the assault from Cheyenne Mountain, watching as human forces struck simultaneously across hundreds of light years. The quantum entanglement network that humanity had secretly constructed allowed for real-time coordination of forces across vast distances, something the Zarkali had thought impossible. Phase 2 is ready, Dr. Paddle reported from her lunar command center. The autonomous manufacturing centers are at full capacity. We're producing more ships and drones every hour than the Zarkali can in a month. In the Sirius system, another key battle was unfolding. Commander Yuki Tanaka's Thunderbolt battle group encountered the largest concentration of Zarkali forces, yet nearly 10,000 ships trying to form a defensive line. "Deploy the dimensional inverters," Tanaka ordered. The experimental weapons were another example of technology humanity had developed but kept hidden. They created localized distortions in space-time, turning the Zarkali's own shield frequencies against them. The alien ships began to fold in on themselves, their defensive barriers becoming their doom. Tanaka watched dispassionately as the enemy fleet was reduced to twisted fragments of reality. Back in Zarkali space, Supreme Commander Casthar was facing the unthinkable, total strategic collapse. Reports flooded in from across their empire. Shipyards destroyed, fortress worlds under siege, entire fleets annihilated. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were systematically dismantling everything the Zarkali had built. How? He demanded of his strategic AI. How did we not see this coming? The AI's response was perhaps the most frightening thing he had ever heard. They showed us exactly what they wanted us to see. Every piece of intelligence we gathered about human capabilities was carefully crafted to lead us to underestimate them. We did not discover them. They revealed themselves to us in a way that would encourage our own arrogance. In Earth orbit, Admiral Zhang received the latest battle reports with grim satisfaction. The counteroffensive was proceeding even better than their simulations had predicted. The Zarkali's rigid command structure and reliance on traditional tactics made them vulnerable to humanity's more flexible and innovative approach. "Begin Phase 3, he ordered. "Target their core worlds. Show them the cost of their mistake." Across human space, the message was clear. The time for hiding their strength was over. Humanity had emerged from behind its peaceful facade, revealing the steel fist that had always existed beneath the velvet glove of scientific advancement. The Zarkali were about to learn that they hadn't discovered a new species to conquer. They had awakened a sleeping giant that had spent centuries preparing for war, while presenting a carefully crafted image of peace. Supreme Commander Kazthar stood in the ruins of his war room, watching as the holographic display showed yet another defensive line crumbling before the human advance. 3 weeks had passed since their attack on Nova Haven, and the Zarkali Empire was facing extinction. "Deploy the world breakers," he ordered, his voice carrying the weight of desperation. It was a weapon they had used only twice in their history, capable of destroying entire planets. But against the humans, even this ultimate weapon proved futile. As the massive world breaker ships moved into position around a key human staging area, they encountered something unprecedented. The humans had already prepared for this possibility. Quantum field generators activated, creating a bubble of altered space-time that contained and redirected the devastating energy back at the Zarkali fleet. Admiral Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the HSS Retribution as the enemy's super weapons destroyed themselves. All forces, advance. Push straight for their core systems. The human fleet moved with devastating precision. They had studied every aspect of Zarkali technology, culture, and tactics during their centuries of preparation. Each counterattack was anticipated, each desperate measure already countered before it could be deployed. In Lunar Command, Dr. Patel monitored the production statistics with satisfaction. "The von Neumann factories have exceeded all projections. We're now producing more ships in a day than the Zarkali could in a year." But the Zarkali were not a species that would go quietly into extinction. As human forces approached their core worlds, they unveiled their final defensive measure, the Mindweave, a vast psychic network that linked their entire species into a single consciousness for combat. "Let them feel our combined might," Kazthar broadcast as billions of Zarkali minds merged into one. Their remaining ships began moving with impossible coordination, their weapons guided by the collective will of an entire species. For a moment, it seemed like they might have found a way to turn the tide. The human advance slowed as they encountered this new type of warfare. But humanity had not spent centuries preparing to be stopped by even this. Commander Victor Santos led the response from his command ship. "Deploy the quantum consciousness disruptors," he ordered. Another hidden human technology revealed itself, devices specifically designed to fragment and disrupt unified consciousness networks. The Mindweave shattered, leaving billions of Zarkali mentally stunned. Their ships, suddenly without guidance, drifted in space or crashed into each other. The species that had dominated this sector of the galaxy for millennia was about to learn the true cost of underestimating humanity. Admiral Zhang coordinated the final push from Earth. "All battle groups, execute Operation Endgame. Show them no quarter, but prepare to accept surrender from any who offer it." The human fleet descended on the Zarkali throne world like an avalanche of retribution. Dark matter drives propelled ships through the supposedly impenetrable planetary shields. Quantum-locked armor shrugged off the defenders' desperate attacks. Swarms of autonomous drones systematically dismantled defensive installations with mechanical precision. In his fortress beneath the capital city, Supreme Commander Kazthar received the reports with growing horror. Every secret weapon, every hidden defense, every desperate measure had failed. The humans had not only anticipated their tactics, but had spent centuries developing specific countermeasures for each one. How? He demanded of no one in particular. How did they hide such power? Such preparation? The answer came from his own strategic AI, moments before its core was breached by human quantum viruses. They learned from their own history. While we saw their peaceful expansion as weakness, they were building an empire of war hidden behind a facade of science and exploration. We never stood a chance. Commander Yuki Tanaka led the final assault on the Zarkala capital. Her Thunderbolt battle group had been reduced in number but remained lethal in its precision. Target their central command structure. Let's end this. The battle for the throne world lasted less than 6 hours. Human forces systematically destroyed every military installation, disabled every weapon platform, and neutralized every desperate last stand. The species that had terrorized this sector of space for centuries was brought to its knees in less than a month. In the end, Supreme Commander Kazthar stood alone in his command center, watching as human forces breached the final defenses. The door dissolved under quantum-enhanced weapons fire, and he found himself facing Admiral Sarah Chen. "Your kind," he chittered weakly, "you hid your true nature from the galaxy." "Why?" Chen's response was cold. "Because we remembered our own history. We knew that true power lies not in showing strength, but in choosing when to reveal it. You mistook our restraint for weakness. That was your final mistake." As human forces secured the Zarkala capital, Admiral Zhang prepared to address the galaxy. Humanity had revealed itself as not just a technological power, but as a species that had mastered the art of strategic deception on a cosmic scale. The message was clear. The peaceful scientists had been warriors all along, waiting for someone to make the mistake of testing their patience. The galaxy would never be the same. 1 year after the fall of the Zarkali Empire, the galaxy was still coming to terms with humanity's true nature. The species that had presented itself as peaceful explorers and scientists had revealed itself as the most formidable military power known to exist. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the observation window of the newly constructed Nova Haven Memorial Station, orbiting the site where humanity's most distant colony had once stood. Below, construction drones were already laying the foundation for a new settlement, one that would serve as both a memorial and a warning. "Begin transmission," she ordered, and across thousands of light years, quantum communication arrays carried her message to every known spacefaring civilization. "Let the record show that humanity never wanted this war. We explored the stars in peace, built our colonies with hope, and extended friendship to all we met. But we never forgot our history. We never abandoned our preparation for the darkness we knew existed in the universe." In the rebuilt chambers of the former Zarkala capital, now transformed into the Galactic Concordat headquarters, Admiral Zhang led the first meeting of the new Interstellar Council. Representatives from dozens of species, including the surviving Zarkali leadership, gathered to establish a new order. "The terms are non-negotiable," Zhang stated, his voice carrying across the chamber. "All species will have representation, all will have rights, and all will understand that peace is not maintained by weakness, but by strength carefully tempered with wisdom." Dr. Patel's lunar manufacturing facilities had been reproposed. Where once they secretly built warships, they now produced exploration vessels and terraforming equipment. But deep within the lunar crust, the production lines for humanity's war machine remained ready, a sleeping giant that could wake again if needed. The quantum consciousness disruptors have been fully withdrawn. Commander Santos reported from his position overseeing the rehabilitation of former Zarkali space. "Their species is recovering from the Mindweave collapse. Some are even beginning to see the defeat as an opportunity for cultural renewal." The survivors of Nova Haven had returned, led by Captain Chen's rescue fleet. They found not just a new colony rising from the ashes of the old, but a monument to the price of peace, the preserved wreckage of the 20 Guardian ships that had given their lives to save 1 million civilians. In Earth's restored Cheyenne Mountain complex, the Joint Chiefs reviewed the lessons of the conflict. "Our strategy worked," Admiral Zhang concluded, "but it came at a cost. We can never return to the pure facade of peace we maintained before. The galaxy knows our true nature now." Commander Yuki Tanaka, promoted to admiral for her role in the war, supervised the integration of captured Zarkeli technology with human systems. Their biomechanical interfaces have applications we never considered, she reported. Perhaps this is how peace should work, each species learning from the others, growing stronger together rather than through conquest. The former Supreme Commander Kazthar, now serving as the Zarkeli representative to the Concordat, had perhaps learned the most valuable lesson. We thought we understood power, he addressed the assembly. We saw strength only in dominance, in visible displays of force. The humans taught us that true power lies in knowing when not to use it. Across human space, the hidden installations and secret production facilities were being transformed. Some became public, converted into centers of trade and cultural exchange. Others remained hidden, their existence now known but their locations and capabilities still carefully guarded. Humanity had revealed its strength, but it hadn't revealed all its secrets. We maintained the Lazarus Protocol. Admiral Zhang informed the Earth Council. We showed them our teeth, but not all of them. Humanity will never again be seen as purely peaceful explorers, but neither will we be known as conquerors. We'll find a balance. In the rebuilt Nova Haven, Governor Elena Rodriguez's memorial stood in the center of the new main plaza, her final words engraved in materials that would last millennia. Peace is not the absence of strength, but the wisdom to know when to show it. The galaxy had learned that humanity's scientific achievements hadn't come at the expense of military capability. They had enhanced it. Every research breakthrough, every technological advancement had been developed with dual purposes. The species that had mapped the genome had also created genetic engineering for enhanced soldiers. The civilization that had cured cancer had also developed nanites that could disassemble enemy ships at the molecular level. As the new order established itself, other species began to understand what humanity had known all along, that true civilization isn't built on conquest or pure pacifism, but on the complex balance between strength and restraint, between the capacity for war and the desire for peace. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon hadn't been its hidden fleets or advanced technology. It had been patience, the willingness to spend centuries preparing for a war they hoped would never come, and the wisdom to hide that preparation behind genuine works of peace and discovery. The galaxy would never be the same, but perhaps some reflected that wasn't entirely a bad thing. A new age had begun, founded not on the pure illusion of peace or the brutal reality of war, but on the understanding that both were part of a greater whole. And in the depths of space, humanity's ships continued their exploration, still carrying scientists and seekers of knowledge. But now everyone knew that behind their peaceful missions lay the strength of a species that had mastered not just the art of war, but the far more difficult art of knowing when not to wage it.